Welcome to another installment of Ask the AD, brought to you by Mammoth Sports. Brian Smoller with Director of Athletics Gene Taylor. Social distance again. We've both been vaccinated. Soon it will be us in the same room because we're both been vaccinated. So get those shots, get your vaccines, and so we can actually do shows and do games and all that stuff in person. We'll talk more about that coming up. Lots of questions from you, the fans, to cover here on Ask the AD. Although, as we get into spring here and turn the calendar over into April, Gina, I guess with March Madness beginning to wrap up, let's put a bow on basketball season. The men's team and the women's team both did not have the seasons they both hoped. Different circumstances for both. One commonality was COVID-19. I guess, what's your evaluation of both basketball programs?
Yeah, Brian, thank you very much. And yeah, I mean, obviously very disappointing. I think we both knew, when I say both, I think both coaches and we all knew that because of COVID, it was just going to be unique. They didn't get to have their typical summer practices. On the men's side, they had a very new team with a lot of different faces. It really didn't get together until early in the season. And then, obviously having COVID interrupt between shortage of players for practices. Obviously the women were shut down for about a month. All those things being said, I think it was much more challenging than we thought. And certainly during the season, I think the victories did not come that we thought we could get early on. But I was probably maybe as frustrating as we all were, including coaches and players, that it didn't go that way. I was just as pleased as how well both teams finished. And when a young team like the men's get beat as badly as they did against Baylor, a lot of teams would have packed it in, and yet they turned it around and won several of their last few games. I thought they were a much different team defensively, and I think they closed out very, very strong, and obviously won a game in the Big 12 tournament and took Baylor to the end, and here Baylor is in the Final Four. So, on the women's side, same thing. I thought they fought very hard during the course of the Big 12 tournament, came close to getting into the semifinals, and I was pleased at how it finished and how they fought and how the coaches brought that team together. And I think both coaches have similar expectations for these teams next year, and that's to be as competitive, a lot more competitive, and be in a position to put themselves in the NCAA tournament next year.
Well said. And with basketball, of course, the one big thing that they have to deal with now is the transfer portal. We expect announcements. We've seen announcements from players leaving, but also expect announcements from players coming in via the portal coming up. And that kind of dovetails into our first question as we jump into the questions today. This one's from Dan Burdiak, who's asking through Facebook, with the constant changes in today's college sports, and he didn't spell them out, but transfer portal is one of those, NIL legislation coming on soon. Do you foresee any major changes in recruiting or eligibility requirements for athletes to even participate in college sports? It's an interesting question.
Very interesting, a very good question. And I had another similar question directly via email. Is this the world we're going to live in? And I said yes. I think the transfer portal is not going away, and the NCAA hasn't even allowed for transfers to transfer without penalty yet. But we know that's coming, and I think you're going to see coaches. Let's take football for example. They get 25 scholarships a year that they can give out. I would say that in my conversation with Coach Kleiman, he's talked about having 15 or so set for high school athletes, and then another 7 or 8 to go into the transfer portal, and then another couple to be held for late transfers that transfer out of the program, maybe after spring ball, and that's going to be a normal process. I think basketball coaches the same way. I believe there's 1,100 athletes currently in the men's basketball transfer portal. So it is a different world, and we're just all going to have to learn to deal with it and live with it. Coaches are going to have to recruit differently. Before, transfers always came with kind of a negative connotation because maybe challenges at their other school. That's not the case anymore. Between graduate transfers, these athletes are transferring to either look for better opportunities or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, it's going to change. And like you mentioned, name, image, and likeness is coming down the path. The Supreme Court, we argued in front of the Supreme Court, the NCAA, yesterday and today, and we're going to get a decision about that and how that's going to affect us. So it's going to be different, and we're going to have to learn to live within it and how to manage it and still be competitive like we always have been.
I know one thing also that's up for discussion is the intra-conference transfer and whether that will be abolished or not, and I would suspect that that would be talked about soon on the horizon if it hasn't been already.
Yeah, a couple of conferences have come out and said that they're going to get rid of their interconference, the Big Ten. They're going to allow interconference transfers, I think the Big 12, and we are currently discussing it. The Pac-12, I should say. And we are currently discussing it as ADs in the Big 12, but we haven't made a final decision as of yet.
All right, let's jump back into football. As you mentioned there, references a couple of times to Coach Kleiman. They're going through spring practice, thankfully, for the first time in over a year, trying to get everything built. And they're doing so in the shadow of some construction that's wrapping up. It's the Shamrock at South End Zone is almost complete. The question from @the K-State family on Twitter asks, with that project almost done, when can we expect construction to start on the volleyball and Olympic facilities?
Well, hopefully soon. And what we're doing now is we've gotten back together with our architects. Our Ahern Fund staff has been able to get back on the road and talk to donors about those projects. And we're trying to reach a certain goal of fundraising that we have set for ourselves, and we're getting close to that. So our hope is that sometime by the summertime, into the fall, that we'll have reached that fundraising goal, and we can begin to put that project out for construction bid and documents. Maybe sometime in September, with construction to start in 2022. That's our plan right now. We still have to hit some fundraising goals to make that happen. We want to get that project started as soon as we can. In 2022 right now looks like a realistic goal for that to happen.
And I hate to throw you a curveball here, but as a follow-up to that, does volleyball continue to play in Bramlage, or do they go back to Ahern until that facility is built?
I think I think Bramlage was a great setting for them. Obviously, there's some things that they don't have, a full-time locker room, but from a practice and participation, it's a great setting, and I think we'll try to make that happen as much as we can next fall. But again, with the regular basketball season, it becomes a little more challenging, but certainly we'll continue to talk about that.
Yeah, tough to use one facility for everything when you get into the month of like November, when you have crossover between all those sports. Speaking of November, that's the crutch of football season. This question comes up every year. It's usually from our friend @ScottWildcat on Twitter, who we'll get to in a little bit. But first, this question actually comes from @KSU Railroader on Twitter, asking about alcohol sales during what they hope full capacity football games this fall.
Well, we're certainly planning on full capacity and making sure that we continue to move forward. You mentioned vaccinations, and certainly those are things that will help. We are planning on regular tailgating, exit and reentry policy. We're still discussing the alcohol sales, whether we're going to have it in all the stadium like we did last fall, or we're going to go back to what we've done in the past and maybe allow it only in certain areas. We got a lot of feedback from our fans. Some don't want alcohol sales throughout the stadium because of the family atmosphere, and some do. And so we're kind of evaluating that and talking through and see what the pros and cons of those are, but we haven't made that decision. But other than that, full operation, exit and reentry, tailgating, we're planning on all for that next fall.
Yeah, you mentioned reentry. I know that was something that was not allowed last year, and now will be back this coming season. Season tickets are on sale. Packages can start as low as $20 for games. Of course, September 11th is the home opener. Spring practice as well. I want to shoot out a reminder about that. An open spring practice coming up on Saturday, April 3rd. Gates open, Gate B. On the west side, open at 11 a.m. for 11 to 12. No autographs, but you can at least watch the last hour of practice for the team, and masks and social distancing still required for that. Let's get to Scott Wildcat and his question this week, and it's one that I know he's asked a couple of other times, and it's about the use of the athletic department using the throwback head logo, the old K-State Willie logo. Are they going to move to make this officially a secondary logo for merchandising, branding, and broadcast use? This is interesting. This comes up every now and then because a lot of times it's the baseball logo, the KS, that's used as the secondary logo by ESPN and some others.
Yeah, what we've decided, this is the Power Cat is always going to be the primary logo for us, and we're probably going to shy away from ever selecting a secondary logo, but we're going to talk about our vintage logos or our traditions logos and bring those out in certain instances or on certain pieces of material or product, and then mix them in various times. Like I said, baseball has the KS, and that's primarily for baseball. I think our golfers use the old kind of the cartoonish Wildcat, and so there are limited use. But we want to make sure that the Power Cat is our main logo and our primary logo, and that will be what we'll use, and then anything else will be kind of entered in where we can use it from a vintage perspective or traditions type of line. Yeah, not an official secondary logo per se. Soccer as well also has their own crest that they use for their stuff. All right, so from that question to more of a 40,000 feet question, which comes from Sue Kamen on Facebook, and she asks you, Gene, what is the biggest challenge
in the coming year, and what's your plan to address it?
You know, I think it continues to be the financial piece more than anything. You know, assuming that we're, you know, back to normal and in terms of operational and practices and athletes being able to have access to facilities and all the things we didn't have a year ago, is we're not out of the woods on the financial perspective yet, and that's a big piece. And you know, last year we had furloughs and salary reductions and obviously operating you know, expenses reduction. And going into this year, we want to make sure that we are financially solvent and able to do the things we need to do, and as we ramp things up, but still making sure we're managing the finances as best we can, yet giving our coaches the things they need. You know, they're going to go back on the road recruiting, we assume, and we're going to have recruits coming in, and you know, but we want to make sure, you know, we don't know what our ticket sales are. We're hopeful that we're going to have 50,000, and all those things have an impact on the decisions we make. But for me, I as an athletic department, we still have to manage our finances the best we can and still do the things we want to do, like build facilities and these coaches putting them in a position to be successful.
That's right, and retaining coaches and retaining staff, all those types of things all play into that, no doubt. Last question is somewhat along the lines, kind of big picture. It comes from @Bob66668047 on Twitter. He asks, Gene, did you ever dream while you were in college that you'd be doing this job with these responsibilities?
Actually, I was going to be in the restaurant business and thought that's what I wanted to do, restaurant and hotel management, and then took a little left turn after I got out of college and found myself in college athletics. But my goal has always been to be a Power 5 AD and sit in this chair. It's something I've always dreamt of, and every day I come to work, I pinch myself and feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the whole world because I get to come to work with great staff, great student athletes. Obviously, K-State's a phenomenal institution. This community is awesome. Our donors are phenomenal. So I literally pinch myself every day and feel how lucky I am to be a part of this, you know, business for one, and then specifically here at K-State.
Well, we're lucky as K-Staters to have you as well, and locked up for a number of years as well with the recent contract extension. Congratulations on that. Thank you for joining us. And anything else you want to say to the fans before we wrap this up?
You know, I just, again, thank them for their patience last year, and as we move into what we hope is light at the end of the tunnel, a more normal process, that they come back and cheer on our athletes. And that's the one big thing I think our athletes miss more than anything, is having those full stadiums and full arenas. And we need you, and we appreciate all you did and all you did to support us through everybody going through some very difficult times for the last several months. Yeah,
the first home events will be in August with soccer, but then that family reunion game, which we always have as the first football game of September 11th, may be really special this year, especially if we can get this COVID thing stuff all behind us. Gene, appreciate the time. Thank you again for joining us. We look forward to doing this next month.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it very much.
That's another Ask the AD. Keep those questions coming on social media and other channels. Until the next time, for Gene Taylor, I'm Brian Smoller. Thank you for watching Ask the AD, brought to you by Mammoth Sports.